My name is Daniel, and I have never told this story publicly before. Honestly, I still do not like talking about it. People hear the words haunted hotel and immediately think you are exaggerating, trying to scare them, or making something up for attention. I wish that was true. I worked one night as a security guard at the old Ashbourne Hotel, and before sunrise, I had already quit. I left my jacket, my shift log, and part of myself inside that building. What happened to me that night is the reason I have never worked overnight security again. I took the job because I needed the money, not because I was brave. That is the first thing I want to make clear. I was 26 years old, between jobs, behind on bills, and willing to work just about any shift as long as the check cleared. A friend of a friend told me about a temporary overnight security position at an old hotel on the edge of town. It had been closed for years, but a development company had bought it and planned to renovate the place into apartments. Until construction started, they needed someone there at night to keep vandals, trespassers, and copper thieves out. That was how it was explained to me. Nothing strange, nothing dramatic. Just sit in the security office, make a few rounds, check the cameras, and call the police if anyone broke in. The hotel was called the Ashbourne, though most people in town still called it the old Ashbourne Hotel. It sat back from the main road behind a cracked parking lot full of weeds and broken glass. From the outside, it looked bigger than I expected. 6 stories tall, wide across the front, with dark windows lined up like empty eyes. The sign over the entrance was still there, but half the letters were missing, and the ones that remained were stained from years of rain. I remember sitting in my car with the engine running, staring at the building through the windshield and wondering why anybody would want to spend money fixing it. Even from the parking lot, the place looked like it had been left alone for too long. My supervisor met me at the front entrance a little before 10 that night. His name was Russell, and he had the tired look of a man who had explained the same boring instructions to too many new hires. He handed me a keyring, a flashlight, a radio, and a folded map of the building. He showed me the lobby, the main staircase, the elevators that were supposedly shut off, and the small security office behind the front desk. The office had a metal desk, an old swivel chair, a coffee maker that didn't work, and a wall of security monitors showing different areas of the hotel. Most of the cameras were grainy, but they worked well enough. Lobby, parking lot, first floor hallway, stairwells, second floor, third floor, fourth floor, fifth floor, sixth floor, service corridor, loading dock. Russell told me the alarm system had been acting up for weeks. Motion sensors would trip in empty hallways. Doors would show open when they were locked, and sometimes the cameras would flicker out for a few seconds at a time. He said it was probably bad wiring. The building was old, the power was unstable, and half the systems had not been serviced in years. I asked him if there had been break-ins. He said a couple, mostly teenagers trying to get inside and film videos. Then he pointed to the radio and told me to call him first unless it was an emergency. After that, he paused in the doorway like he had forgotten something. "There's one thing," he said. "Don't use the elevators. They're locked out, but still, don't mess with them. And don't go past the 4th floor unless you have to. The upper floors are in rough shape." I asked him if the 4th floor was dangerous. He looked down the dark hallway beyond the lobby, then back at me. "Just old," he said. "Old places make noises. Don't let the building get in your head." That was the last normal conversation I had in that place. After Russell left, I locked the front doors behind him and stood alone in the lobby. The silence hit me almost immediately. Not quiet. Silence. The kind that presses against your ears. The building seemed too big around me, like every dark hallway was waiting for me to move first. The lobby still had old furniture covered in white sheets, a dusty chandelier hanging above the center of the room, and a long reception desk with chipped wood along the edges. Behind the desk were rows of empty key slots, most of them labeled with room numbers that had faded yellow tags. I tried not to stare at them too long. Something about those empty slots bothered me, like the hotel was still waiting for guests who were never coming back. For the first hour, nothing happened. I sat in the security office with the door open, watching the monitors and filling out the shift log. At 10:30, I made my first round. I walked the lobby, checked the front doors, checked the side entrance, then walked down the first floor hallway with my flashlight in one hand and the radio clipped to my belt. The carpet smelled like mildew. The wallpaper was peeling in strips. Some of the room doors were open, and when my flashlight passed over them, I saw bare mattresses, broken lamps, and curtains hanging crooked over black windows. Every few steps, the floor creaked under me, and the sound seemed to travel farther than it should have. By midnight, I was already uncomfortable, but not scared. There is a difference. An abandoned hotel at night is supposed to feel creepy. I told myself that over and over. Every strange sound had an explanation. Pipes cooling, wind moving through cracks, loose doors settling in their frames. At 12:17, one of the motion lights on the monitor panel blinked red. Camera 14, 4th floor west hallway. I leaned closer and saw nothing but a long empty corridor in gray night vision. The hallway stretched away from the camera, with doors on both sides and a dark window at the far end. No person, no movement, just an empty hallway. I wrote it down in the log as a false motion alert. At 12:22, it happened again. Camera 14, same hallway, same empty corridor. This time the red light blinked 3 times before stopping. I stared at the screen, waiting to see a rat or a hanging piece of plastic moving in the air. Nothing. I radioed Russell and told him camera 14 was tripping. He answered after a few seconds, sounding half asleep. Probably the wiring, he said. Just check it on your next round. I did not want to go to the 4th floor, but it was my job, and at that point I had no real reason not to. I took the stairwell instead of the elevator, just like Russell told me. The stairwell smelled damp and cold. My flashlight beam bounced over graffiti, cracked concrete, and old emergency signs. When I reached the 4th floor landing, I stopped with my hand on the door handle and listened. There was nothing on the other side. No footsteps, no voices, no movement. I pushed the door open. The 4th floor was colder than the rest of the hotel. That was the first thing I noticed. The air changed the moment I stepped into the hallway. It felt like walking into a room where someone had left a window open in winter, but the windows were shut. My flashlight stretched down the west hallway, and I recognized the view from camera 14. Doors on both sides. Old carpet. Dark window at the end. Nothing there. I walked the length of the corridor slowly, checking each door as I passed. Some were locked. Some were cracked open. I pushed them with my flashlight and looked inside. Empty rooms. Broken furniture. Dust. Nothing that should have triggered a motion sensor. Then I heard a sound behind me. It was soft but clear. A door clicking shut. I turned around so fast my flashlight beam hit the wall. The hallway behind me was empty. Every door looked exactly the same as before. I stood there listening, trying to slow my breathing. Then I told myself what I had already told myself a dozen times that night. Old building. Draft. Loose door. Nothing more. When I got back downstairs, the security office felt smaller than before. I sat down, took a drink of water, and looked at the monitors. Camera 14 showed the 4th floor hallway I had just walked through. Empty. Camera 9 showed the 3rd floor east hallway. Empty. Camera 6 showed the 2nd floor stairs. Empty. I was about to write another note in the log when something on camera 14 changed. At the far end of the 4th floor hallway, near the dark window, a woman was standing. I did not understand what I was looking at first. My mind tried to turn her into something else. A shadow, a coat rack, a reflection, but there was nothing in that hallway when I had been there, and now there was clearly a person. She stood facing the camera from far away, perfectly still. She appeared to be wearing a pale dress or nightgown. Her hair was dark and hung down around her face. The image was grainy, but I could tell she was not walking, not swaying, not moving at all. I grabbed the radio and called Russell. No answer. I called again, louder. Still no answer. I looked back at the monitor. She was still there. That was when I made the first stupid decision of the night. I convinced myself someone had broken in. Maybe a homeless person. Maybe a teenager. Maybe someone hiding in the building before I got there. That explanation scared me, but it scared me less than the other possibility, so I held on to it. I took my flashlight, left the office, and went back to the stairwell. Every step up to the 4th floor felt heavier than the last. I kept telling myself that if she was a trespasser, she was probably more afraid of me than I was of her. When I opened the 4th floor door, the hallway was empty. I shined my light to the far end where she had been standing. Nothing. No woman. No dress. No footprints in the dust. I checked the rooms nearest the window. Empty. I checked the bathrooms. Empty. I opened a storage closet and found only old towels, a broken vacuum, and a smell so rotten I shut the door immediately. I called out, "Security. You're not supposed to be in here." My voice sounded weak in that hallway. The words went out and died. Then a phone rang. It came from one of the rooms behind me. I nearly dropped the flashlight. The sound was loud, sharp, and old-fashioned, the kind of ringing you hear from heavy hotel phones from decades ago. I turned toward the sound. It was coming from room 417. The door was closed. The phone rang again. Then again. I stood there frozen, staring at the number on the door. I knew there should not have been any active phones in that building. Russell had told me the lines were disconnected. The place had been closed for years. The ringing stopped. For a few seconds, the hallway was silent. Then, from inside room 417, something knocked on the door. 3 slow knocks. I backed away. I did not open it. I did not say anything. I just backed away until my shoulder hit the opposite wall. The radio on my belt crackled, and Russell's voice came through in pieces. "You there?" I grabbed it and answered, but my voice shook. I told him there was someone on the 4th floor. I told him the room phone had rung. There was a long pause. "What room?" he asked. 417. Another pause. Then he said, "Go back to the office." The way he said it made my stomach drop. Not check it out. Not call the police. Not probably wiring. Just go back to the office. I moved quickly down the hallway, trying not to run. The whole time, I expected the door to open behind me. I expected footsteps. I expected a voice. None came. I went down the stairs 2 at a time and did not stop until I was back in the security office with the door shut. I locked it, though I knew the lock was cheap and probably useless. My hands were sweating so badly I had trouble holding the radio. Russell came back on and asked what I saw. I told him about the woman on the camera, the empty hallway, the phone ringing, and the knocking from inside room 417. He did not laugh. He did not sound surprised. That scared me more than anything. "Stay in the office," he said. "I'm going to try to get somebody out there." "You're going to try?" I asked. "It may take a while." I looked at the monitors again. The woman was no longer on camera 14. She was on camera 9, 3rd floor east hallway, closer to the lobby. She stood at the far end of that corridor, facing the camera in the exact same position. Same pale dress, same dark hair, same motionless shape. My mouth went dry. I looked from camera 14 to camera 9 and back again. She had not walked from one floor to the other. There was no footage of her moving. She was simply no longer in one place and now in another. I told Russell she was on the 3rd floor. He said nothing. Then the feed from camera 9 flickered. For 1 second, The screen went black. When it came back, she was closer. Not close enough to see her face, but close enough for me to know she had moved. Except I had not seen her move. She was standing in the middle of the hallway now, still facing the camera. Her arms hung straight down at her sides. Her head tilted slightly, like she was studying me through the lens. I backed away from the monitors. The hotel intercom clicked on. I had not noticed the speaker in the ceiling of the security office until that moment. It let out a burst of static so loud I flinched. Then a woman's voice came through, low and thin. "Can you hear me?" I stopped breathing. The voice was not loud. It sounded close, like someone speaking from the other side of a wall. I looked at the office door. The hallway outside was empty on the lobby camera. I grabbed the radio and told Russell the intercom was on. He said something, but static swallowed his words. The woman's voice came through again. "Please don't leave me here." I cannot explain what that did to me. It was not a scream. It was not angry. It was worse because it sounded human. Sad. Afraid. Like someone who had been waiting a long time for anyone to answer. For one terrible second, I almost felt sorry for her. Then camera 9 flickered again, and when the image returned, the woman was closer to the camera. Close enough now that I could see her bare feet on the old carpet. I whispered, "No, I did not mean to say it." It just came out. The intercom clicked again. This time the voice said, "You saw me." The security office suddenly felt too small. I stood there with my back against the wall, staring at the monitors, unable to move. Camera 9 flickered again. She was closer. Another flicker. Closer. Each time the screen glitched, she appeared several feet nearer without ever taking a step. She was almost directly beneath the camera now, head angled upward. Her face was still hidden by her hair. Then the monitor went black. All of them did. Every screen on the wall cut out at once. The office was lit only by the small desk lamp and the red glow of the alarm panel. I heard the building around me. Not settling. Not creaking. Moving. Somewhere above me, a door opened. Then another. Then another. One after another down a hallway I could not see. The sounds traveled through the hotel like a wave. Doors opening on the 3rd floor. Doors opening on the 2nd. Doors opening somewhere near the lobby. Then the phone on the desk rang. It was so sudden and loud that I jumped back into the chair. I stared at it, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. It was an old beige office phone with a cracked receiver and faded buttons. I had assumed it was dead. It rang again, then again. I do not know why I answered it. Maybe because fear makes people do strange things. Maybe because part of me still wanted someone alive to be on the other end. I picked up the receiver and said nothing. For a moment, there was only static. Then the woman whispered, "I'm outside." I slowly turned toward the office door. There was a narrow window in the upper half of it, covered with dust and wire mesh. At first I saw only the dark lobby beyond it. Then a shape moved into view. Pale fabric, dark hair, a woman standing on the other side of the door, close enough that her forehead almost touched the glass. I dropped the phone. The sound of the receiver hitting the desk snapped something in me. Whatever courage or curiosity I had left disappeared. I grabbed my keys from the desk, but my hands were shaking so badly. I dropped them once before getting them into my pocket. I kept my eyes on the door. She did not move. She stood there with her head lowered, hair covering her face, one hand resting against the glass. Then she tapped the window with one finger. Once, twice, 3 times. The same 3 knocks I had heard from inside room 417. I knew then that I was not dealing with a trespasser. I knew it in a way that went deeper than thought. Every part of me knew that the thing outside that door was not a living woman. A living person does not appear on cameras without walking. A living person does not speak through disconnected intercoms. A A living person does not stand outside a locked office after being seen 2 floors above seconds earlier. I moved toward the back exit of the office. There was a service door that led behind the front desk and out into the lobby near the side entrance. Russell had shown it to me earlier. I turned the knob slowly, praying it would not squeal. The office door was still in front of me, and the woman was still on the other side. I stepped backward through the service door, keeping my flashlight pointed at her through the dusty glass. That was when the desk phone, still hanging off the desk, whispered my name. Not over the intercom, not from the hallway, from the receiver on the floor. My name, clear as day. I ran. I am not ashamed to admit that. I ran through the side corridor, past the front desk, across the lobby, and toward the side entrance. The lobby lights flickered overhead. As I reached the door, the elevator behind me dinged. That sound froze me for half a second because Russell had said the elevators were locked out. The doors opened slowly with a grinding metal groan. I looked back. The elevator was empty. Then, from inside it, the old speaker crackled and the woman's voice said, "4th floor." The doors began to close. I slammed through the side entrance and stumbled into the parking lot. The cold air hit my face, and for the first time all night, I felt like I could breathe. I did not stop until I reached my car. I locked the doors, started the engine, and backed out so fast my tires scraped over the broken pavement. Only when I reached the far end of the parking lot did I look back at the hotel. A light was on in one room, 4th floor, one window glowing weakly in the dark face of the building. Room 417. Standing in that window was the woman. I could see her from the parking lot. She was facing me. Even from that distance, even through the dirty glass, I knew she was looking straight at my car. Then she lifted one hand and placed it against the window, palm flat, like she was pressing against the inside of an aquarium. I drove away. I called Russell from the gas station down the road. My voice was shaking so badly I could barely get the words out. I told him I quit. I told him I was not going back inside that hotel for my jacket, my log sheet, or any amount of money. He tried to get me to calm down, but he did not sound confused. That bothered me. He sounded guilty. I asked him what happened in room 417. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he told me there had been a woman named Elaine Marrow who stayed at the Ashbourne in 1986. She checked into room 417 and was never seen leaving. The hotel staff claimed she packed up and left in the middle of the night, but her family never believed it. Her suitcase was gone, but her car was still in the parking lot 2 days later. The police searched the room and found nothing. No body, no blood, no sign of a struggle. The case went cold, and after a while, people stopped talking about it. I asked Russell why he did not tell me that before my shift. He said, "Because nobody would take the job if we told them everything." I hung up on him. For weeks afterward, I had nightmares about that hallway. Not dramatic nightmares with screaming or blood, just that grainy camera view of the 4th floor, the long empty corridor, the dark window at the end, and her standing there, still as a photograph, waiting for the screen to flicker so she could be closer. A month later, I saw an article online about the Ashbourne renovation being delayed. The article said workers had discovered structural damage inside several walls on the 4th floor. There was one sentence near the end that made my hands go cold. It said police had been called after contractors found personal belongings hidden behind a section of wall near room 417. The article did not say whose belongings they were. It did not mention Elaine Marrow. It did not mention remains. It did not mention a woman in a pale nightgown standing on security cameras. I never found out what happened in that hotel, and I do not want to. People sometimes ask me why I quit after one night. They say maybe it was stress, bad wiring, old cameras, shadows, fear getting the better of me. I let them say it. I do not argue anymore. There is no point trying to convince someone of something they are lucky enough not to have seen. But I know what I saw. I know there was someone or something inside the Ashbourne Hotel that night. And I know she followed me through those cameras long before she ever reached the door.